Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your patience and welcome you to this news conference hosted by the Ministry of Public Utilities and the Water and Sewerage Authority. It's called to provide an update to the national community on the current dry season, its impact on our water supply, and measures being taken. Welcome to the Ministry, the members of the head table, the Permanent Secretary, Ms. Nicolette Duke, Mr. Anthony Bartholomew, advisor to the Honorable Minister, staff of the Ministry of Public Utilities and WASA, members of the media. We are also live online on TTT. Welcome to the Ministry of Public Utilities. My name is John Victor, and I'm pleased to host this morning's news conference. And in the interest of time, we will just go seamlessly into our presentations. And to bring the opening remarks on behalf of the Honorable Minister, let me invite Ms. Nicolette Duke, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Thank you, Mr. Victor. Members of the head table, Deputy Chairman, Mr. Alston Fonillier, Mr. Anthony Bartholomew, advisor, members of the media, good morning. Thank you for joining us today as we address an ongoing issue that is of great concern to us in the public utility sector because of its negative impact on one of the primary and most essential services that we provide to you and to all the people of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. As many of us are aware, Trinidad and Tobago is currently undergoing a dry season that is even hotter and drier than usual. What you may not be aware of is the fact that we are not alone in this regard. In its Climate Outlook newsletter for the Caribbean, just last month there was an issue in which the Caribbean Climate Outlook Forum noted that 2024 is shaping up to be a year of climate extremes in the Caribbean with an intense heat season consisting of recurrent heat waves. Noting that long-term drought has developed in a number of countries, including Trinidad and Tobago, the Climate Watch organization further emphasized that the incursion of Sahara dust is also likely to impact rainfall, heat, and wildfire activity. Indeed, countries throughout the region have been experiencing the effects of this extreme weather. Just yesterday, our neighbors in Grenada implemented restrictions in water usage in an attempt to manage the impact of its driest season in 14 years. In Guyana, agriculture has been severely affected by long and severe drought-like conditions, compelling the government to send food aid to certain regions within the country. Here in Trinidad and Tobago, we have had to contend with similar conditions and their impact on the Water and Sewerage Authority's capacity to provide a reliable and adequate water supply to the population. This morning, we have with us Mr. Shakir Beg, Acting Director of the Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Services, who will go into further detail about the prevailing weather conditions over the past few months. Ms. Shaira Ali, Director of Operations at WASA, and Mr. Kelvin Romain, Acting Chief Executive Officer, are also here to inform us of the measures that have been implemented to alleviate the impact of these conditions on our water supply and provide relief to affected communities. You are most likely aware of the many strategies and programs that we have established over the past few years to facilitate the transformation of the water sector. These initiatives, like the Community Water Improvement Program and the National Water Sector Transformation Program, which includes the commissioning of wells, water treatment plants, and other capital-intensive infrastructural projects, continue to expand the authority's capacity to source and distribute water across Trinidad and Tobago. While these programs are ongoing, the current conditions have put immense strain on our water resources. As such, we are focusing on implementing measures and operations within the authority to alleviate the impact of the unavoidable shortfall in water supply. Before I yield the floor to Mr. Baig, I would like to assure you and assure the people of Trinidad and Tobago that we at the Ministry of Public Utilities, and the Minister is very intensely focused on this, we are all aware of the challenges that the citizenry faces regarding a reliable and sustainable water supply. We too, as citizens, it pains us to hear of the cry of households and communities that are not receiving an adequate supply of water. And so we have resolved that our top priority here at the Ministry of Public Utilities and WASA will be to continue to work together to navigate this difficult period as we set our sights on a secure and sustainable water future for us all. So I invite you to listen intently to the presentations today and to ask those questions that you know the public would need the answers to, so that we can all give the assurance to Trinidad and Tobago that we are working assiduously to meet and exceed their needs for this most essential resource. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Permanent Secretary, for those opening remarks. And ladies and gentlemen, we go right into the presentations, and so that we have a seamless flow, I will invite first off Mr. Shakir Baig, the Acting Director, Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service. He will be followed by Ms. Shaira Ali, Director of Operations of the Water and Sewerage Authority, and given some closing remarks with a focus on the way forward will be Mr. Kelvin Romain, the Acting Chief Executive Officer, Water and Sewerage Authority. Let's welcome Mr. Shakir Baig.
Thank you very much, Mr. Victor. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My job this morning is a very simple one, and I intend to keep it brief, to present a summary of the 2024 harsh dry season and an outlook for the remainder of the month of May. It would be remiss of me as a meteorologist and a world-class meteorologist in your presence if I did not indicate to you via a satellite image what is happening at this time in our region and across the Atlantic. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the entire. Thank you very much. We're noticing across the entire Atlantic to the east of Trinidad that we don't have any significant cloud development. We're also noticing north of Trinidad, throughout the entire Caribbean region, they're experiencing similar conditions to what we're experiencing here in Trinidad. Very high temperatures, very dry atmospheric prevailing conditions as well. And if I were to be a forecaster for a little bit, I can say at least for the rest of today and in the coming days, we may see a patch of cloudiness, like what we had this morning that gave us a brief shower that will really be insignificant in terms of rainfall or water accumulations. So we may see a brisk shower coming our way over the next 24 hours, but after this, we return to a prolonged period of dryness. Thank you very much. As I commence my presentation, I wish to present a key finding from the World Meteorological Organization. the World Meteorological Organization conducted a meta-analysis of temperature that they've collected from around the globe. The key finding from this is that 2023 has been the warmest or the hottest year on record. The WMO continues the research, and the data that they have gathered to date shows that the temperature is trending for 2024 in such a way that the records will demolish that of 2023. So 2024 is set to become the hottest year ever on record. Ladies and gentlemen, how does that translate for us here in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of heat and hot days? My slide indicates decadal periods, from 61 to 70, all the way up to 2011 to 2020. And I'm calling a hot day a day where the temperature reaches 34 degrees Celsius or higher. If you look between 61 and 70, there were just 9 days where we experienced temperatures 34 degrees Celsius or higher. If you look at the decadal period for 2011 to 2020, we had 415 days. This shows a trend where we're experiencing higher than normal temperatures, which is leading to hotter days and warmer nights as well. So what are some of the broad-scale atmospheric drivers that is resulting in the dryness and in the hot temperatures? We know there's global warming and there's climate change that's occurring. As scientists, we have looked at the data, we have worked with the Intergovernmental Panel. Let me pause and welcome our Honorable Minister. Good morning, Minister. So we have worked closely with the Intergovernmental Panel on climate change, and we have concluded that climate change is real. It's affecting countries, it's affecting the globe, and we are seeing a manifestation of its effects here, even in Trinidad and Tobago. Prevailing at this time as well is a phenomena which is known as the El Niño phenomena. I can get you at the Met Office someday and run a tutorial on this so that you understand fully this phenomena, but I'll not go into any detail this morning. We've noticed, though, that we're moving away from the El Niño phenomena into neutral conditions, and later in the rainy season, we may enter a La Niña phase. There's scientific data and there's correlation to suggest that when El Niño is present, we have higher temperatures, we have less rainfall, we have harsh dryness, as opposed to when we're in La Niña, we have more rainfall and more storms. And so we are transitioning. But as it is right now, we're in this El Niño phase. Hot temperatures, very dry atmospheric conditions prevailing. And this year, we would have all experienced it. We had an increase in Saharan dust outbreaks. And a correlation was done between Saharan dust outbreaks and the amounts of admittance that we have at the Port of Spain General Hospital suffering asthma attacks. And they've had more this year than normal because of the prevailing Saharan dust. So some of the impacts from these broad-scale atmospheric drivers will be, we have experienced drought-like conditions, not only in Trinidad, but our Caribbean neighbors as well. And we heard from PS that our neighbors in Grenada, in St. Vincent, even going up the islands, they've all been experiencing a very harsh dry season. Of course, with the paucity in rainfall, we have a scarcity in that vital supply of water. Because of the Saharan dust, we have air quality issues, and you would have witnessed it. You just need to drive around the island. The amount of bushfires that we experience in 2024 is phenomenal. And of course, all of this is leading to altered rainfall patterns. The data that we have gathered at the Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Office supports, this is real data of rainfall amounts that we've collected for the entire dry season to date. If you take a look at it both for Piarco and Crown Point, where we collect data and compare this data to the long-term average, you'd recognize that for January, February, and March, we've experienced below average rainfall. And well below average, we experienced just a little bit above the average, and this had to do with one rainfall event that we had with the passage of the tail end of a cold front. I don't know if you recall, in April, Tobago had some rainfall, and we gathered some at Piarco as well. Startling, though, is that we're almost near the middle of May, and the average rainfall for Trinidad and Tobago for May is 124 millimeters, and to date, we've just gathered 0.4 of a millimeter. So we're experiencing some really dry conditions, you know, and a paucity in rainfall. So what's going to happen for the rest of May? The diagram, you know, attempts to highlight, you know, a probabilistic forecasting. So there's a 60% chance, which is, you know, there's a near high level of certainty that this dryness will continue for the rest of May. There's also a 60% probability that we may gather near 60 millimeters of rainfall in the blue areas, which covers the eastern, southeastern, and southern coastlines. But keep in mind, right, that the average rainfall is 124 millimeters for this month. So even if we gather that 60 millimeters, it's just about 50% of what we'd normally cover. And Tobago, there's a 60% chance that they'll continue to experience very dry conditions with very low rainfall accumulations. Ladies and gentlemen, that's my outlook for what's happening with the harsh dry season. We're having our National Climate Outlook Forum on Tuesday, the 21st of May. And we will, at that forum, outline what we expect in the upcoming months with respect to the rainy and hurricane season. And what's going to happen is going to be really fantastic, and we would like to invite you guys to join us on Tuesday. Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister Marvin Gonzalez, other members of the head table, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. The 2024 dry season in Trinidad and Tobago has posed significant challenges to the water resource management, as below average rainfall, prolonged periods of elevated temperatures, as you would have heard, has increased evaporation rates and have exacerbated water reduction and supply availability. The outlook for the 2024 dry season forecasted a period of drier than normal conditions for the first half of the dry season during January to March, and conversely, near normal conditions were projected for the second half of the season, April to June. I would like to share with you some data on the current rainfall at the main impounding reservoirs. Rainfall figures throughout the 2024 dry season were under the long-term average for each month of the season at all of the various impounding reservoirs except in April. Actual rainfall captured for the period February to April was only a fraction of the long-term averages and projected figures as identified by the Met Office. As you can see, the total rainfall at the 4 reservoirs for the period compared to the combined projected are as follows. Hollis Reservoir received 296.5 mm of rainfall compared to the projected 551.6 millimeters. Arena Reservoir obtained 220.7 millimeters, whilst 408.5 mm was projected. Navet Reservoir realized 281.8 millimeters. However, it was projected to receive 335.1 mm, and Hillsborough Reservoir got 292.8 millimeters when it was projected to receive 271 millimeters. Thus far as at the 8th of May 2024, the following rainfall totals have been received at each reservoir compared to the projected for the month. Hollis Reservoir has received 1.4 millimeters of rainfall compared to 197 millimeters projected for the month. Arena Reservoir received 1 millimeter compared to 152.8 millimeter projected for the month. Navet Reservoir received 4.5 millimeters compared to 150.9 mm, and Hillsborough Reservoir in Tobago received 1.8 millimeter compared to 143.4 millimeters. It is important to note that the reduced precipitation has not only affected the recharge of our reservoirs, an important supply during the dry season, but also the levels of our rivers and groundwater aquifers, and consequently the production at their related water treatment plants. Let's talk a little bit about the current reservoir levels. With the deviation in rainfall trends from the long-term average and projected rainfall totals, the recharge rate of the reservoirs has been severely impacted by these conditions. As at present time, Caroni Arena Reservoir was at 35% capacity compared to the long-term average of 60%. Hollis Reservoir was at 45% capacity compared to the LTA of 49%. Navet Reservoir at 38% capacity compared to the LTA of 53%, and Hillsborough Reservoir at 48% compared to the LTA of 58%. As a result of the reduced water storage levels in the reservoirs, the production at their corresponding water treatment facilities have necessarily been reduced in order to preserve a sustainable water supply until the beginning of the wet season. The production at Caroni, Hollis, Navet, and Hillsborough have experienced production shortfalls of 33%, equating to 20 million gallons per day, 34%, equating to 2.91 IMGD, 17%, equating to 4.81 IMGD, and 14% equating to 0.3 IMGD, respectively. Communities served by these plants may have experienced reduction in supply as a result of these reduced lake levels. The drier than normal conditions that have persisted throughout the dry season to date is affecting the authorities' ability to provide a resilient and sustainable water supply to some areas. As you can see on the screens, some footage of the current levels and the current capacity at each of the main impounding reservoir, and also in Tobago, Colan, a critical water treatment facility that abstracts water from the Colan River, the North Oropouche facility in Valencia, second largest facility in Trinidad, where current levels at the intake are 1 foot below well level. Similarly, other surface source plants such as Akuno and Elanin in the Maracas Valley area, Cora, and a number of other surface source facilities in North Trinidad were severely impacted. At present, Trinidad has recorded a deficit of 33.5 IMGD, or approximately 25% of total capacity, whilst Tobago is experiencing a deficit of 2.85 IMGD, or approximately 43% of total production capacity. This situation is currently affecting approximately 600,000 persons across both islands. The production shortfall has profoundly impacted the water supply across different regions. In particular, the reduction in production at Caroni Water Treatment Plant, Trinidad's largest facility, has profound implications for the water supply to large segments of the island. Apart from the drier than normal conditions of the season, the Caroni River continues to be impacted by unregulated upstream water abstraction. As a result, the Caroni plant has been unable to maintain its typical production level of 75 million imperial gallons per day, with a production being reduced to 55 imperial million gallons per day, leading to supply reductions in areas such as Cascade, Belmont, Barataria, Morva, Kernaham, Couva, Claxton Bay, Caratal, Labrie, Penal, Faizabad, and Sine Village. This reduction has also highlighted the vulnerability of our water supply system to the impacts of climate change and changing weather patterns. In the Northeast region, communities served by facilities such as Hollis Reservoir and, as I've mentioned, the Maracas, St. Joseph water treatment plants, Elenan and Akuno, are facing challenges with reduced supply. The Hollis Reservoir, serving approximately 50,000 persons across a wide area in the eastern part of the country, has experienced decreasing lake levels and a production deficit of 34%, or 2.9 imperial million gallons per day, leading to supply reductions in areas such as La Florissant, Ridgeview Heights, Pine Hill, and Windy Hill. Several localized sources in areas such as Matlot, St. John's, Kumak, and Tamana have also experienced reduction as the dry season intensifies with high temperatures. Similarly, in the Northwest, areas served by the Marval water treatment plant have experienced a notable reduction in supply, with operational adjustments implemented to maintain service levels. For example, neighborhoods such as Moraldo, Hillsborough, and Hayland Park now receive water based on a revised schedule, which will be published as immediately. This plant must be stopped for 45 hours daily to allow for recharge of the river, to build storage levels to resume pumping operations. Additionally, areas along the North Coast and Santa Cruz served by facilities such as Tyrico, Las Cuevas, and Blantyres have witnessed supply reductions due to decreased production. In the South region, production constraints at facilities such as Clark Road and Navet have led to supply issues in areas such as Goodman Trace, Lachus Road, Bagarati, Mayaro, Rio Claro, and Princestown. The Navet plant has recorded a 17% decrease in production, equating to 4.8 IMGD. Let's talk a little bit about Tobago. Tobago's water supply has also been impacted by declining river levels, leading to total reduced production of 2.85 IMGD at several surface source facilities, namely Charlottesville, 80% reduction, Corlon, 77% reduction, Kings Bay, 62% reduction, Richmond, 33% reduction, and Hillsborough, 14% reduction. The reduced production from these facilities disrupted schedules in areas such as Plymouth, Speyside, Blackrock, Charlottesville, Roxborough, and Goodwood, to name a few. However, I would like to stress that recently completed projects such as the desilting of the Hillsborough Dam, the Chevron Road Booster, and Bad Hill projects have assisted the island to mitigate some of the challenges of this harsh dry season. I would like to share with you some of the works that the authority have already engaged in and will be continuing over the next several months to ensure sustainability of supply for the upcoming dry season and future dry seasons. In order to enhance the resilience of our surface and groundwater supply and distribution to meet the challenges posed by more severe dry season conditions and climate change, the authority has embarked on numerous multifaceted programs across Trinidad and Tobago. These include National Water Sector Transformation Program, or NWSTP. The Government of Trinidad and Tobago, in collaboration with support from the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, has launched the National Water Sector Transformation Program aimed at addressing key challenges in the water sector and promoting sustainable management of the water resources. The objectives of NWSTP include improving the operational efficiency and reliability of water supply services, enhancing the quality of water services for underserved communities throughout Trinidad and Tobago, developing capacity and providing institutional strengthening to the Ministry of Public Utilities and the Water and Sewerage Authority to improve governance and sustainable management of water resources. More important, this program encompasses various critical projects, including the construction of 2 new water treatment plants in Santa Cruz, in Trinidad, and Goldsboro in Tobago, much needed new facilities. Additionally, the program involves the rehabilitation of 5 existing plants, namely Navet, North Arapuch, Guanapo, Chatham, and Freeport. Other components of the program include the implementation of a non-revenue water NRW reduction program and the deployment of supervisory control and data acquisition, SCADA systems, bulk metering initiatives, and the replacement of aging pipeline infrastructure. The National Water Stabilization Program, NWSIP. This program represents a critical effort to upgrade and develop water supply infrastructure across Trinidad and Tobago. One of the primary goals of the NWSIP is to eliminate pipe-borne water rotational schedules, particularly the schedule of supply 1 in every 9 days experienced by some communities. Key projects under the NWSIP include construction of new water treatment plants in Moruga and Carsonfield, upgrade the existing infrastructure, including the Carapal water treatment plant, to enhance water supply reliability and efficiency. These programs signify an investment in Trinidad and Tobago's water infrastructure, aiming to address immediate challenges and lay the foundation for more resilient and sustainable water supply systems. Let's talk about groundwater programs. A very key component, especially in our preparation for future dry season conditions. The authority continues to employ various strategies to increase the amount of groundwater available for treatment and distribution to the population, not least of which includes the completion of routine maintenance work on the authority's existing groundwater infrastructure, converting observation wells into production wells, rehabilitation and improving production at existing production wells, and the drilling and commissioning of new wells across Trinidad and Tobago. Since 2023, the authority successfully brought several wells into production, contributing an additional 2.99 million gallons per day to various regions in the country. These include Arima, Aripo, Aruca, Freeport, and etc. These initiatives have improved our water supply resilience and have brought relief to thousands of customers in this challenging period. In 2024, the authority broke ground to start the drilling of 2 new wells in Mayaro, commenced on a program of wells in Granville, and commissioned 4 new wells in Las Lomas, Trinidad, and Marys Hill, Tobago. Some other programs of which there were tremendous success include the Community Water Improvement Program, Over 71 projects completed to date, of which 50 pipeline installation, some 36 kilometers of pipeline changed, new pipeline installation, 15 new booster stations constructed, 3 well rehabilitation, 1 new tank farm, 1 water treatment plant rehab, and 1 new water treatment plant. These works were targeted in communities that have been unserved and underserved for far too long, and with the introduction and commissioning of these several projects have brought tremendous improvements in the water supply to the underserved communities. Northwest Water Improvement Program, NWSIP, 9 booster stations refurbished, 12 mains and pipeline replacement, and 1 well rehabilitated. Work continues under this program, and in several areas of the Northwest community, it is expected that improvements in the efficiency of the operations will continue so that customers who reside at the elevated or the extremities of those systems will now enjoy a more reliable supply. Tobago. Tobago's Water Supply Improvement Program, or TWSIP, included or started very importantly with the desilting of the Hillsborough Dam. 4 pipeline projects, over 9 kilometers of pipeline, 8 new booster stations, 3 new wells, and 1 tank refurbishment recently completed. The authority is prepared and capable of navigating the country through the remainder of this harsh dry season. To do so, a combination of strategies is being employed to address the immediate impacts of the water shortage, whilst also laying the groundwork for medium and long-term resilience and sustainability in Trinidad and Tobago's water sector. It is integral that the public, as a significant stakeholder, partners with the authority in the management of our water resource by adopting responsible water conservation practices. I thank you.
Honorable Minister Marvin Gonzalez, Permanent Secretary, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Advisor to the Minister, Deputy Chairman, Acting Chairman of the Water and Sewage Authority, Head Table, executives, MPU employees, wonderful Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning, everyone. I just want to thank Mr. Big, Director of Met Office, for your presentation this morning. It was really informative and a bit of an eye-opener with regards to the outlook of the dry season. As it relates to temperature, I was really taken aback. I was not quite aware how dry or harsh that temperature could have been this year, and it's possibly, as you said, it could take us on another record, which is obviously concerned to WASA and evaporation as it relates to our reservoirs. Thank you, Director Ali, as always, for your comprehensive overview of the current state as it relates to our water supply. Director Ali would have pointed out a number of, she would have pointed to some information relating to our reservoir levels. And while those reservoir levels are considered low, I would have taken a look back in history, and I could look to 2010 and 2020, where we have had significantly lower reservoir levels in 20, and I'll just pull out the Arena reservoir as an example. The Arena reservoir in 2010, we would have had about 19%, 2020 about 15%, while in 2023 we have 35%. Now, why I brought that to the fore is to indicate to the national community, while we have a harsh dry season, and high temperatures, we've been able to manage our water supply, in my opinion, reasonably, and the data would show. And those would have been based on a number of initiatives, and I want to point out one initiative which would have been directed by our goodly minister, which is developing our sustainable water supply for example, the well program that we have successfully benefited from. Director Ali would have mentioned a couple of those. I would also want to mention that while we are in a dry season, there were customers who were able to receive water for the very first time in Trinidad and Tobago. We could speak to areas like Mon Diablo, we could speak to areas in Las Lomas, we could speak to some of the areas in Tobago. So I just wanted to highlight that as important to mention. My job here today is to inform the national community of the strategies that we are going to employ to ensure that we have more or less of a sustained supply over the period of about 6 weeks. We anticipate, based on Director Biggs' report, that we would be getting some rainfall, I hope significant, in the first part of June. So I will now apprise you, our national community, as to how WASA will be addressing those current shortfalls. To start, we have established a command center of, command center. This would be directly chaired, and the oversight would be done by our deputy chairman, or acting chairman, Olson Funilier. This center will provide 24/7 support for our water trucking facility. It will be operational. It will provide, operational feedback to the call center and monitor schedule compliance via pressure logging throughout our network. I just wanted to pause there. I did mention pressure logging throughout our network. We envisage to have a ubiquity of pressure loggers throughout our system so that we could remotely monitor everything. As it stands right now, we do not have full coverage, but we employ the technology of pressure loggers using telemetry, where we get some information remotely. Otherwise, we employ our technical officers to gather that information. We have streamlined our water trucking service by establishing regional water schedules, which means that it's a proactive approach. We are aware of some of those hard-hit areas where it will go beyond schedule, and we are focusing on those areas and sending out, before you call, hopefully, to those areas, truck supply. I'd also like to mention that we are doing some tests, some experiments, some scientific experiments, I would say, where we are going to do some injection of some water at various points on our network. We have streamlined our water trucking service by establishing a regional water trucking schedule. We have increased our tanking fleet by 100%. The management of our water truck distribution will be performed by our central command center, again, as headed by our goodly deputy chairman. We have implemented an additional shift at our contact center, which takes our contact center to 24/7 operation. This means that we have increased call center staff, a new platform of data management with some aspects of real-time data, operational data that is, of which I would have spoken about earlier. And we have set some KPIs, especially with those calls that comes into our call center. We have recently had some issues with wait time in our queues, and we are addressing those issues at this point in time. In times like these, we typically rely on, in the water industry, and not just in Trinidad, internationally, we rely on desalinated water. In our case, we have access to two plants in Trinidad, one namely the Desalcott and the other Seven Seas. Desalcott has suffered the effects of the weather, the extreme weather conditions, with high saline content in the Gulf of Paria, as well as some algae buildup. And as a result, they had to curtail some of their production. However, after much consultation and a directive by our line minister, Marvin Gonzalez, we have met with Desalcott, and we are working on a ban, so to speak, where over a 24-hour period, they would increase their supply by about 5 million gallons a day. So that would definitely benefit us. We anticipate an additional supply of 300,000 gallons a day from our Seven Seas plant, from the Seven Seas plant in the Point Fortin area. So the authority aims to provide an uninterrupted service to the public by way of a dedicated truck service to all critical institutions to mitigate the impact on our public service, namely schools, hospitals, government institutions, etc. We also established 3 additional hotlines at our contact center. As I mentioned, our contact center is beefed up, and I anticipate that we would handle the traffic, the new traffic, I would say, that comes into the center. So with that, with those few words, I end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, members of the head table, for those presentations. At this time, our minister has joined us. I will ask him to join us at the head table, as we will now field some questions from the media based on the presentations that you have seen. It will be useful if you can identify yourself and the media house you represent as you pose your questions. So you may pose your questions now to the panel. Yes. So it seems. No question? Alicia.
Hi, good afternoon. My first question is Alicia Boucher from TV6 News. My first question is to Mr. Baig. I was wondering, now you projected that the rest of May is going to be dry, and that the probability is that more than likely we would still get, I believe it was 50% below what we projected initially in terms of the amount of rainfall that we receive, if I'm not mistaken. So I wanted to find out, when are we expected to get some kind of relief from that situation, and in terms of what the projection is like when that rainy season sets in?
Thank you very much for the question, Ms. Boucher, and welcome. We have looked at the data, and we've also examined the numerical weather prediction models, and they're all pointing in the same direction. That direction is, at least for the rest of the month of May, we'll continue to experience harsh, dry conditions with high temperatures. Climatologically, we will see a transition from the month of May. As we enter into June, we'd start seeing those clouds coming by. Scientifically, at the Met Service, we have 2 indicators that we look at to indicate the onset of the rainy season. And those 2 indicators are the first set of rainfall that we get from the intertropical convergence zone. And you know that term, we refer to it as the ITCZ. That's an acronym that has become a household name. And secondly, when we get rainfall from the very first tropical wave, we have been monitoring these two atmospheric features, the ITCZ and the tropical wave, and we are not seeing any activity or signs that we'd get a visitation from either of them to produce any significant rainfall. So you're right, at least for the month of May, we'll continue to experience hot and dry conditions, and by the end of May into June, we'd start seeing some rainfall episodes. I'm hoping that it can be significant ones to help our friends out at WASA. But what I'm seeing right now is that the initial set of rainfall will not be very significant. So we are joining our colleagues in saying that, look, at least for the next 6 weeks, we need to anticipate that there'll be no significant rainfall. However, as we get into the month of June and we start seeing those tropical waves, we start seeing the establishment of the ITCZ, we anticipate that we'd receive some significant rainfall, which would have an impact on the very low levels at our nation's reservoirs.
Okay, and I know that, let me just ask this question for the benefit of the public and for those who may not necessarily fully understand. I know that we have the surface level sources, we have the ground water level sources. We got some projections as to where we are with the surface level water sources. I don't know if we know what capacity our groundwater level sources are at this point.
This is a question that I'll pass to my colleague on my left.
Yes, good morning and thank you. Our groundwater sources have always been sustainable and have shown resilience, especially during the dry season conditions. So we continue at all of our groundwater sources throughout Trinidad and Tobago to maintain maximum production levels.
So, sorry, let me just follow up. So I'm guessing that this would, the groundwater is in particular, that would be where the wells are at?
That is correct.
In terms of our ability, because we mentioned the well program, so I guess that would be, as we said, from the groundwater level sources and groundwater sources. In terms of our ability to, I guess, when the rainy season sets in, collect more water, is there anything in train in relation to that, to be able to collect more water? I guess maybe other reservoirs, other dams?
Okay, that's a very excellent question. I'd just like to go back a bit with the first question you would have asked, and just to put it in perspective, we in Trinidad, in terms of our water supply, 60% is surface water, which is why there's a concern, especially with the weather conditions and the weather patterns at this point in time. 20% is desalinated water, and the other 20% it's groundwater. Director Ali would have spoken to it. It is sustainable. It is protected, obviously, seeing that the storage, it's a underground storage, basically, we are tapping into. And going forward with regards to the other question, we are dependent on rainfall to top up our levels. However, as part of our strategic plan instituted by the Ministry of Public Utilities, one of the pillars is optimization. And in optimizing, you optimize the system, which would include the installation of new tanks. Actually, at this point in time, we have been constructing tanks. The last one we would have been constructed would have been in Parliament. We have another one that is actually on its way, being constructed in Valsain. So yes, we are increasing that storage capacity as well, and we are continuing with our forward-thinking strategies. Yeah.
Any other questions from the media? Yes, we have a hand up.
Good morning, everyone. Nandi Ramswarup, Music Radio 97. To the Honorable Minister, has there been any developments on the arrests or arrests coming out of the water trucking scam in Mon Diablo? And I know you said there was an investigation into the situation in Kernahan. Has there been any updates as well coming out of that?
Thank you very much. I think I have to disappoint you tremendously on this occasion. This news conference was called to update the country on the state of affairs with respect to our water supplies and what the authority is doing to respond to this situation. And I don't want to contaminate this news conference with other matters that are outside of the remit of this news conference.
Understood. Thank you.
Good morning, Terry Ann Brown Campbell from TGT News. Can I get a sense of where the pressure sensors are and the size of this monitoring system network that you all have in place?
Okay, so we have a limited amount of pressure loggers, and they are placed throughout our network. So we're trying to maximize the use of them. As I said, it's a hybrid system where we utilize the pressure loggers as well as manual labor. Manual labor meaning that you would actually go out and read a pressure gauge. Obviously, there are areas based on the geography. We would utilize that as a strategy to install pressure loggers. So it's throughout the system. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I'd also like to add that we have recently procured an additional 350 loggers, and we are going to continuously expand that asset in terms of loggers, and those loggers are supposed to be in the country by Monday. Director? Yes.
Any other questions based on the presentations, as we said?
Regarding the water trucking distribution system, the size of the fleet, and if you all have any intention, based on the last presentation that you all did at the start of the dry season, if you're all going to be using any contractors to assist with the size of the trucking.
Yeah. Of course. So we are continuously expanding the fleet for the need at this point in time. So obviously the expansion will be short term. We have a fleet of about 74 trucks at this point in time, inclusive of contracted trucks.
Okay, yeah, I just want to ask, because I don't know, so let me just ask the question. What are pressure loggers and how do they function in terms of, you know?
Okay, great question again. So a pressure logger is a device that changes the water energy to electrical energy. So there's a transducer in the pressure logger that measures the actual pressure of the water, sorry, and we actually, in our instance, we read that information via interface, a computer interface. And we could get that information remotely using a SIM card. So it's really high tech.
And how does it function in terms of, is it how much water people get? Is it just for you to have an idea of?
So what happens, right? From the supply point, and this is why it's important to us for various reasons, but in this instance, from the supply point to where the last customer is, there's a difference in time when you open that valve. What the pressure logger would tell us, one, if you have it at the supply point, the supply is on. And at the end point, how long it takes for that supply to actually saturate the entire area. With that information, we could actually plan and give customers what they want in terms of the relevant information as to when you'll actually get a supply. What we are looking to do instead of in our schedules is to relook our schedules and create bands of time. So when we give you a band of time, typically the first time would be when the supply is on, and the last time we are sure that the last customer should reach at our critical point.
I know you said that 350 pressure loggers were procured. I don't know if this would be a viable question, but I'm going to ask it again. how many do we have, and how many would be adequate for the system that you are functioning with right now?
Okay, so we have probably about just over 200 loggers right now, and we are, as I said, we are continuously expanding our stock. Now, ideally, our transmission and distribution system is subdivided into grids. So the more grids you have, the more monitoring and data points you would want to have. And hence the reason why it will be continuously expanding. With a smaller, it's like eating an elephant in small bites. So what we would have done is subdivided our system, where we have manageable systems, control systems, and hence the reason we would have more loggers, more meters, more data points, basically. More data, obviously, we could manage the system better.
And one last quick question for Mr. Big. I know you mentioned the ITCZ, and you said that you are hoping that when we do get that rainfall, it would be significant. Is there a but you also did say that, if I'm not mistaken, 2024 could beat 2023 in terms of the hottest year on record. Now, I know that that might be within a particular period that it's measured. Is there any projection that we would get significant rainfall as the rainy season sets in, or does this look like a drier year? When is El Nino expected to kind of lift? Do we expect to get into La Nina?
Thank you very much for that question, Ms. Boucher. So from the scientific viewpoint, we would look at the broad-scale atmospheric drivers in order to make a forecast for what we'd experience in the upcoming rainy season. And one of the broad-scale atmospheric drivers that we are looking at right now is the El Nino phenomena. We've examined the El Nino phenomena, and we are seeing that at least for the next 2 months, it continues to exist. However, the projections are for it to move to neutral and enter a La Nina phase later on in the rainy season. There is scientific evidence to suggest, and there's correlation between La Nina and an increased amount of rainfall. So as it is right now, we are forecasting a near normal transition into the months of June, July, but as we shift to La Nina and we enter into what we like to refer to as an active phase of the hurricane season, we'd also see an increase in the amount of rainfall from those two other phenomena that I spoke about, the ITCZ and the tropical waves. So whilst we're transitioning near normal, but in the latter months, July, August, September, above normal rainfall is in the forecast.
Final question. Thank you so much, Mr. Big. Mr. Romain, can you tell us what was the cost to procure the 350 pressure loggers?
That will be about just over 1 million TT dollars.
And how soon do we expect to get them?
We should get that by Monday. Hopefully we could get it before. Monday coming. Sorry.
So, ladies and gentlemen of the media, I want to thank you for your questions, except there are any more. So I want to thank you for your questions. At this time, let me invite the Honorable Marvin Gonzalez, Minister of Public Utilities, to bring some remarks.
Thank you very much, John. Not really remarks, but perhaps closing remarks. First, let me apologize for my late arrival at this news conference. We had a special cabinet meeting this morning, and certainly as a member of the cabinet, I'm not privileged to miss cabinet meetings. But I want to thank the head table for a fantastic and professional job that they've done here this morning. Kelvin, Shakir, and Shira, I'm very proud of you all, and you all have been model public servants in the way that you comported yourself and the way that you made your presentation. And I'm hoping that the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago can really digest the information, albeit some of it might be very scientific in nature. But I'm hoping that the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago really digest the critical information that you've put forward before them, and that we all understand as a population the difficulty that we face not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but as a region where this prolonged dry condition continue to exist. We would have seen on social media over the last 48 hours people screaming at WASA, especially given the fact that yesterday was Mother's Day. Several of our communities, unfortunately, did not get their supply of water, and we would have seen some very unfavorable comments on social media with respect to WASA. I want to emphasize to the people of Trinidad and Tobago that WASA is just one stakeholder in the water ecosystem. WASA depends on the natural environment to get water, be it from rainfalls, etc., from our underground aquifers, from our surface water intakes, etc. And if we don't have rainfall, then the authority does not have the water to provide to you, the citizens. And that's the reason why during these dry conditions, you have water scheduling taking place, because you would have seen from the presentation a short while ago, WASA is without 35 million gallons of water daily. Water that it would normally have at its disposal to distribute to communities and to public institutions and our hospitals, etc. 35 million gallons of water deficit the authority now has to manage in these difficult circumstances. Just last night, as we were preparing to report to you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, we would have seen in Jamaica, in Bahamas, in Grenada, in St. Vincent, parts of Guyana, they are all struggling as we are struggling here because they are facing similar circumstances. And I want members of the media to understand that as we ring the alarm bell and press the red light button on this situation, it is not a time to sensationalize or to engage in practices that will create panic in the national community. It is about putting forward the relevant information in a professional manner so that the citizens can understand the situation that we find ourselves in as a region, not only as a country, but as a region, and that the authority is now putting systems in place to manage during these difficult circumstances. As I listened to Shira's presentation, I asked myself, what it would have been had we not drilled all those wells over the last 2 to 3 years? What it would have been had we not engaged and executed seamlessly 71 projects under our Community Water Improvement Program? What it would have been had we not desilted the Hillsborough Dam successfully, increasing the dam's capacity? What it would have been had we not engaged in the Northwest Water Improvement Program and the National Water Sector Transformation Program? Today, whilst we report the very difficult realities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, we are here to tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago that we could have been reporting even more difficult news here to you today had we not engaged in some of these critical projects. Just last week, I think the Water and Sewerage Authority would have put out a very comprehensive press release indicating to the national community that we will commence the drilling of over 20 groundwater wells all over Trinidad and Tobago, targeting unserved and underserved communities. You would have heard from Kelvin and Shira that our groundwater resources tend to be more resilient in dry conditions as these. And therefore, communities that are served by those groundwater wells today have not been impacted as communities served by our surface water plants. And that is the reason why we are saying that in 2024, going into 2025, we will drill 23 groundwater wells targeting unserved and underserved communities. It bears testimony that we know exactly what we need to do over the next 12 to 15 months to make Trinidad and Tobago's water sector more resilient. So it could have been worse. But during the next 6 weeks, we pray to God and we hope that we see an improvement in our weather conditions so that our dams and our reservoirs can collect sufficient water so that we can come out and crawl out of this in a way that will not create further difficulties to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I want to thank the management of WASA, the Met Services, and the Ministry of Public Utilities for collaborating towards putting measures in place to ensure that our call center operation remains operational for 24/7, not only during the next 6 weeks, but throughout, so that when our citizens need help, they can feel confident that when they call our call center, someone is there to respond to them, to assist them in at least getting a truck-borne supply of water. I want to thank the Deputy Chair of the Board of WASA, who will now chair a committee to ensure that the measures that we put in place are well executed, that the command center that we put in place will operate on a 24/7 basis, managing all of the operations and all of the initiatives that we have put together for the next 6 weeks. We will ensure that our water trucking services will be targeted towards unserved and underserved communities, especially those communities that would feel the impact of reduced capacity by 35 million gallons of water. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, whilst we do our part, whilst you do your part as media, whilst we do our part as members of the government and members of the authority, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago must do their part in undertaking the necessary conservation at the domestic level. If you have a leaking tap, if you have a leaking tank, please fix it. This is not an opportunity where you're going to take your hose and allow water to run indiscriminately in your drains to water your plants, etc., when other communities, all they're asking for is water to bathe and water to cook and water to send their children to school. It is a collective effort. As citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, all our hands must be on deck in order to manage during this difficult time. Whilst, yes, we admit we are approaching a crisis point, the authority has put sufficient measures in place to mitigate the difficulties that our citizens can experience and are experiencing and will experience over the next 6 weeks. But it is not impossible. We will manage. I take note of what Kelvin said, that in 2020 and in 2010, we were far worse. We were far worse. We experienced far worse, and we managed. In 2024, even though the situation was not bad as 2020 and 2010, we are in a far better position to manage because of the initiatives that we have successfully implemented over the last 3 years. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is no time to panic. You have a team of competent managers at the authority who are working day and night to manage and to provide the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago with relief as best as we can. We have our call center operation operating on a 24/7 basis, and we have our command center working around the clock to ensure that the initiatives that we put in place are well executed whilst we manage for the next 6 weeks. So thank you very much, and may God continue to bless each and every one of us, and may God continue to bless we the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Public Utilities, for your closing remarks. And ladies and gentlemen of the media, I want to thank you for your attendance here today, and for, of course, the reportage that we will see later on as we digest the information that was dispensed here today. I want to thank you very much, and do wish you a good rest of the day and week. Thanks very much.